In these unprecedented times, to have not one, not two, but three therapies coming through the approval and reimbursement process in the United States, it puts enormous stress and heightens the importance of finding biomarkers to facilitate the treatment of patients and to expedite future clinical trial work. That was the underlying thesis for undertaking this whole endeavor. And it was done with great discipline and adherence to a very low-key sense of urgency. The objective is the widespread adoption of blood-based biomarkers in clinical practice. The execution is, I think we're going to see a work in progress, but we're going to have something sooner than I think the general opinion thinks we will. Just want to take a step back, or as Drew likes to call it, go off-roading for a second. Let's just really take a minute and look what has transpired since the June timeframe through to the approval of Leqembi. We have now seen, for the first time in an approved drug label, based on my conversations with a lot of regulatory lawyers, that you had two blood-based biomarkers in the Leqembi label in a drug that was not supposed to have a companion diagnostic in it. What was the FDA saying to us all when it put that into the label? What was the message to us? And I think it's pretty simple, but it is a conjecture, and that is, with all deliberate speed, get some blood markers in here to make the field's ability to perform better. PET is not the first screening or diagnostic tool we want to use across the world, and certainly not even in the United States. What else did we see? We have seen, by virtue of the approval of Leqembi, Medicare saw a certain amount of enlightenment. And as a consequence, just earlier this week, days ago, they said they were going to open the PET imaging CED and allow for a much more robust, we think, coverage. There we go. I had nothing to do with it. Isn't that great news? So there's no question that when they promised Congress, they as CMS, that they were going to cover the label, they had to cover with every element of the label. And so they decided that you needed 5 assessments of the administration of Leqembi. Well, you need PET, at least in several of those assessments, if not all of them. We'll see what they ultimately come up with, but we're certainly not going to be limited to one for the lifetime of a Medicare beneficiary, a very important deal. Let me just tick off 2 others. The label said you should, which I read as you must, use APOE4 genetic testing to determine the status and risk profile of a patient before administering Leqembi. That's, by the way, both of these conditions I'm talking about now, the first being the PET and second being the administration of a genetic test, are class requirements. So Aduhelm, if it comes back, will have to do this. Leqembi's going to have to do this. Donanemab's going to have to do this in some configuration. That's actually, in my humble opinion, a good thing, but Medicare is going to cover it. Get a qualified, validated genetic test, they're going to cover it. And same with blood tests. What those blood tests need to look like in terms of the level of validation, whether they can get reimbursement under Medicare for a lab-developed test versus a approved diagnostic from FDA. I think that discussion is open, but I wanted to just briefly show you all these very material changes that have occurred, sea changes that have occurred in less than 60 days, and it colors everything you're going to see next about how we're going to advance the markers. Now back to the script. This blood-based biomarker program is initially U.S. focused, symptomatic patients, absolutely dedicated to continue to consider new and emerging data and data sets. And the most important point is, and with all the accelerated changes, these are recommendations and not rigid requirements, and my professional colleagues up here will bear down on that point. Uh, Obviously, we want to take into account and make them, these blood marker insights, appropriate for many different geographical locations. Read that to mean ex-US is a very important consideration in these discussions. And other disruptive diagnostic tools such as digital cognitive assessments. One word on that, everything that's being written, and I think there were at least 3 or 4 gatherings of all the folks that are worried about blood-based biomarkers at this conference, various subgroups and large groups. There's no shortage of inefficiency in that, but also great creativity in that. I think we're going to also see very quickly that there's going to be a natural inclination to pair new technologies to enhance and enrich our confidence interval around blood-based biomarkers by using digital cognitive tests, retinal exams, oral analytical tests, and it will provide for a better patient experience, a more productive clinical experience. I don't expect all this to happen tomorrow, but just because we're talking about blood-based biomarkers today, we in no way have suggested that these other emerging technologies aren't going to provide great, useful insights into the analysis of the program. But look how much they've accomplished, and I had nothing to do with it. So let me just offer you our gratitude, all of you that kept a very tight schedule. We started this last year at Lausanne, a gathering that CEOI conducts every year and always comes out with remarkably important new ideas. We went to CTAD, then Workstream A was launched, and constant meetings from January through to today. And one of the things was drive to getting work not just done, but available for your review. So we're all here going to talk about some outputs that have really been in the making only 5 months, which by virtue of this science and where we are is a really concentrated and productive endeavor. And now I'm about to hand this over to Susan, but these are the major work groups, key objectives and outputs. We have been rigorous in trying to stay with this, but also keep one eye on the changing field as it evolves. We have had a very good, not overly burdensome steering committee and governance structure that I think actually did a lot to help inform us, because everyone is coming from so many different places to help enrich the discussions. It was really a treat to be part of this endeavor.